So hi everyone, I'm Steve Dybsky. I lead the sales and account management teams for Oracle's North America advertising business. I'm in from Minneapolis, which is notoriously bad for weather. I remember sitting on my couch Monday or Tuesday of this week watching the snow fall in the window thinking, God, I cannot wait to get to Boston. And it has lived up to expectations. I'm here with Mel DiBiasio. Mel is the Director of Media and MarTech at Ocean Spray. Mel, do you want to maybe talk for a minute or two just in terms of your role at the company?
Sure, yeah. So as Steve mentioned, I lead media and MarTech at Ocean Spray, so all of our paid media initiatives across TV, digital, et cetera, working closely with our agency based in New York, and then also the other side of my role is our MarTech, so our oceanspray.com consumer-facing website and kind of all the pieces and parts that feed into it.
So I think it's interesting, watching the sessions today, there's a handful of threads that have been continuous throughout. One of those is exactly what we're here to talk about today, putting ourselves in the mind of our customer. I think Jacqueline spoke to it with Papa John's earlier today. But one of the other threads that seems to continue to come up is how our industry is continuing to evolve and change. And I'm going to throw a little bit of an audible for an icebreaker and Mel, ask you, when you look to the future amongst this chaos, what is the one thing that you're really excited about, whether that's just the industry as a whole personally or as it relates to Ocean Spray?
Yeah, I mean, I think the chaos in some ways is exciting to me. I think the fact that we don't know what's coming next, but everything that evolves is an exciting change, even though it does tend to, the system's not always working, right? Like TV measurement is chaotic. We haven't figured it out yet. But every day that passes, I feel like we're getting a step closer to that. And so that's exciting to me, is figuring out what the measurement of the future will look like, what the currency of TV will become. So that's exciting to me. And I think similarly in the digital side, like how our platforms are evolving, how we're able to do more and reach consumers in social is evolving. I think all of it in spirit of reaching this consumer and being more consumer-centric, delivering those personalized, relevant experiences to the consumers is going to make their lives easier, while also the industry hopefully shaping this up to make our lives easier to be able to do that.
So I think pulling on that thread a little bit more, I think everybody in this room, if you were to take a poll of hands, things that are top of mind are privacy and cookie deprecation and the shifting in media consumption, things like streaming. Yeah. When you think about that, what specifically are you guys doing to make sure that you're able to continue to put the customer at the center of everything that you're doing as things continue to change at an increasingly rapid pace?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so much about the insights that we have. And so just understanding truly who our consumer is, where they are, what they're doing, what their mindset is, and finding those places where our messaging is going to be relevant to them. And I think to your point, certainly not having those first-party cookies is going to make it harder to reach them, but we try to leverage as much as we can what's available in each of the platforms and really rely on that data from our partners. And so, going into programmatic with the trade desk, using Walmart's data that way, using, we actually partner with Oracle for some of our purchase-based data as well. And so using that to find people who have purchased certain products on social. So really just being able to figure out kind of which platforms people are on, again, what they're doing at that time, and then customizing the creative to that. So if we're using that purchase-based audience, we're going to be using really product-focused creative, getting people to pull down the funnel, whereas if we're more in the social space looking for a holiday host, we might be a little bit more inspirational about recipes and different things that that people are thinking about as they're planning their holiday. So making sure that you're kind of thinking through all of those different pieces of the consumer journey and that the messaging we're giving to them is relevant, but also that we're pairing that with the right target audience.
I think let's dive into some of those. You mentioned platforms and channels there and making sure that what you're doing is relevant. Sean touched on this a little bit in our first one around streaming platforms. So Netflix, for example, we're seeing a lot of shifting from linear to consuming video via streaming. What are the things, or how are you adapting to that shift and the things that you're focused on to make sure that you're capitalizing on this emergence in streaming?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something I'm sure, as many people in the room have had their eyes on for many years. And so we've, over the past 4 or 5 years, slowly been pulling away from linear and going more into streaming. And as we've been doing that, we've been able to measure and see how that's working. And also the industry is evolving. So we've been able to do more. Rates have gotten more efficient. We've been able to establish relationships, know what partners work for us, what partners don't, but also testing and learning along the way. And because we've been doing that for a while now, as we've crossed this precipice now where our consumer is consuming streaming more than they're consuming linear, we have actually pulled completely away from linear TV. And I think, one of the things for me that I think is important to how Ocean Spray approaches media is that we're not afraid to do things like that. We are, if something's not working for us, even though it's the thing that we've done for however many years, we don't need to keep doing it. So making sure that we're following, again, that consumer. What are they doing? Where are they engaged? What's performing for us from, all the different metrics that we look at. And so I would say we are all in now on streaming. And I think there are pros and cons to that too, because certainly now our buy is a little more fragmented. It's a little harder to manage. But there's also advantages that we haven't even yet been able to get to, which is having more bespoke creative based on all of the different platforms, right? There are just so many more opportunities that we're just starting to unlock, and are excited to see what's next in this journey for us.
So kind of pulling it back beyond streaming platforms in general, what are the things that you're doing? We always want to be in front of the right person at the right time in the right place. How are you leveraging the different platforms to do that? And is context in any way, shape, or form playing a role in that? Because with the deprecation of cookies, you're starting to see people move back towards kind of this reemergence of context.
Yeah, for sure. So, we definitely do take a top-down approach. So again, kind of looking at what are those mass reach vehicles primarily. So for us right now, again, that's more of the streaming TV, where we're buying that on a demo basis. And then again, looking back at what is the target consumer that we're trying to reach, and what is the mindset of that person when they're potentially interested in our products or in the message that we're trying to send to them. So figuring out kind of what those platforms are to reach that consumer in the right mindset at the right time. And then again, based on the targeting that's available, particularly in each of those platforms, how we're able to do that. So again, I mentioned it earlier, I think social is a great way to get to people when they're looking for inspiration. And we can use the different social platforms even in different ways to do that. So Pinterest is more of that inspirational kind of recipe focused or decor. Where you might be more on TikTok when you're looking for, something a little more fun, or you might be looking for a life hack or something along those lines, right? Finding the right platforms and targeting the right people at the right time, but then pairing the content with it. And then to your point around context, again, that kind of plays into what I was just saying, just in terms of putting the right content in those platforms that we feel the consumer's mindset is in the right place to get that contextual relevance. But we do also leverage some contextual in our buy as well. I think a really good example of this is we have a functional line of beverages, one of them being focused on immunity. And so wanting to make sure that immunity-focused juice is paired with the right type of content that someone is consuming, where they might be looking for either a remedy for an illness, or whether they're looking for that proactive kind of content to not get sick. And so, some of those types of products, functional, another one that's worked well for us was diet, just that people are really more in a specific mindset, or that fits more from a contextual standpoint versus our core juices, where it's kind of like an everyday type of juice. So I think contextual has a role, but I see it more so for kind of those niche audiences or need states.
Now, what about commerce platforms or retail media networks? Something that we're starting to hear a lot more about. How are you guys taking advantage of that?
Yeah, great question. So we do have a separate team at Ocean Spray that I partner very closely with that does more of the retail media network buys. But I think what's great is the way that we work together, where my team manages that mass market, broad reach media, and then bring them down the funnel into the retail media networks. And so we still handle more of that offsite media. So as I mentioned, like using the trade desk to reach a Walmart consumer when they're not on Walmart.com, but finding them and pulling them in. We also leverage Micmac in a lot of our media, and we're able to create audiences off of retargeting Micmac. And that, again, just brings us a little closer, farther down the funnel. And then again, we see that pull through when someone then goes to Walmart.com or goes to Kroger.com and is, potentially searching for our products, or they're browsing and they remember that they've seen something from us, because we're reaching that audience then again, what maybe before they're actually looking to purchase, but then when they're looking to purchase from the RMN, and that's where we really pull them through. So I think that two-pronged approach, and again, really looking at how we bring them down the funnel, has worked well for us.
One of the things that Melissa and Jacqueline hit on earlier today was kind of this notion of incorporating celebrities or influencers into what you're doing. The Big Boy example from Papa John's. How are you guys thinking about that? What are ways in which you're leveraging influencers or celebrity talent, and how do you go about securing those working relationships? What are those things that you're thinking about as you go after that?
Yeah, we have two different approaches to influencer. We have both a push and a pull, and so I think we of course look to incorporate influencers where we can into our campaigns. So where we see an opportunity, and really the opportunity would start from a strategic standpoint of, does social media make sense for this audience? Again, looking at that consumer, are we trying to reach them on an Instagram, on a TikTok? And then further beyond that, do we feel like we maybe need that third-party credibility, or is this an audience that just responds really well to that third-party credibility or to the influencer space? And so if that's the case, more from the push standpoint, we would, look to partner with someone who's really authentic, fits the brand. We always look for someone who truly loves our brand, first and foremost, because it just doesn't feel authentic if it isn't. And so, partnering with them and putting that as a part of the campaign. I think what's also really important when we do that push approach is making sure that influencer is using their own kind of way of communicating with their audience to fit our message, rather than just reading an ad, right? We've all seen the influencers who kind of just read off a script for a brand. An example that we did for our holiday campaign, there was an influencer we partnered with who was a singer. She did a lot of songs in her content. So we said, write a song about cranberry sauce. And she did, and it was awesome. So I think, it's really important to kind of tap into like what these people are naturally good at, and then also what their audience likes from them, because then your content just feels more natural, it feels more integrated, it might not feel like a sponsored post, and that's really important for us. And then from pull standpoint, we also have our social team kind of constantly out there just looking for people who, celebrities and anyone in between who might be using our product or talking about our product. And again, from that authenticity standpoint, how can we pull them in? Can we do a one-off campaign, or can we, bring them in as an influencer the next time that we do something on that particular brand or product? So I think it's really important that you do both. Because if you're not out there looking for who those authentic influencers are, it's a little bit harder to find them in the moment that you're ready to activate on a campaign.
Just out of curiosity, how do you gauge the success of a partnership with an influencer?
Yeah, we do a lot of measurement. So we certainly have brand lift studies, sale lift studies, things like that we try to incorporate into our campaigns. But at the same time, I think a lot of it is more of just that authentic, like the engagement that the post gets. We put paid behind most of our influencer content as well. And so certainly looking at our standard media metrics, trying to read it in our marketing mix model, all of those things. So there's a lot of different ways we look at it. And I think it's important that we don't get too stuck on some of those details. We try to focus on, again, what is the most important reason that we're working with these people, and that's really for that engagement. So that's our primary.
So I guess pulling that back a little bit further then, when we talk about insights, I think the theme for today has been understanding our audiences and then putting ourselves in their shoes, and that's part of insights. But the other side of that is around kind of metrics and leveraging performance to plan for the future. So how are you thinking about insights in that capacity?
Yeah, I just mentioned our marketing mix model. I will say that is our kind of primary KPI that we look at for all of the media that we run. As a CPG, we don't get the direct response out of our campaigns, and so that's really important to us. But I think actually something that we've talked a lot more about, especially over the past couple of years, is pairing that with also looking at our overall brand health. And so putting a little bit more onus on not just our brand lift studies, but like we have an ongoing brand tracker, as well as household penetration, which is just a KPI that the business looks at more. And so like not just, being stuck on kind of one metric or just looking at sales, because frankly, sales is not usually the primary KPI of a campaign. Although certainly we like to see that as a pull-through, we're looking more for reach, awareness, and different things for the campaigns that I manage. So how do we balance all of the things that we're trying to do to make sure that, sure, we want to drive that ROI, but also that we're moving the brand forward, especially, again, over the past couple of years, we've been really trying to refresh the brand, give it a bit of a new identity, and appeal more to younger audiences. And so seeing those results, we're going to see that more in our brand tracker. So looking at millennials and how they're perceiving our brand is far more important than the ROI that we got on a campaign, because again, that was what we were developing the campaign and the media plan for. So I think that's been a really good unlock for us and something we've had to take some steps to get to with management, but it's a great one just to make sure that we're balancing and looking at all of the different pieces of that puzzle.
So one final question before we take some questions. And while we're on the topic of learning, we're going to hop in the DeLorean and go back a couple of years. If there was something that you could tell yourself 2 years ago that you know now, what would that be?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a lot of things, certainly. But I think probably paying more attention to AI. I feel like, a few years ago, we had Siri and Alexa, and I was like, all right, this is, voice-activated technology. It's cool. We might be able to do something with it, but I don't think probably most of us had any idea how quickly it would develop and how much now we're trying to figure it out very rapidly. So I think it would have been great to have a little more foresight and be able to learn a bit more about it earlier on to be, more prepared to leverage it now.
Yeah, I think a lot of us would probably say the same thing. Questions from the group for Mel?
So you talked about how you had divested from linear TV and moved over to streaming. Are you guys still looking at live sports opportunities within streaming? And if so, have you found any areas that have been more successful than others?
It's a great question. We've never been huge into sports, I think, just because our demo has predominantly been, older females, and so it wasn't necessarily there, although that is shifting. We do still look at live sports more so on an opportunistic basis. And this past year, we tested out a live CTV unit during the Women's World Cup, actually, which was fun for us. And so we're dabbling in it. But again, because sports was never like a big part of our strategy, it didn't feel like, we were losing that by moving away from linear, whereas I think some advertisers would feel that way.
I was going to ask, hi, I'm Ashley, I work at Roku. What are your thoughts on shoppable CTV? I know that obviously audiences are moving towards streaming, so you have that scale of TV, but the precision and interactivity of digital, so I wanted to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, I think we're excited about it. We've started to explore some stuff with QR codes. Again, that unit that I mentioned, we had a QR code in it. McMac has some opportunities. Walmart's now launching some opportunities. So I think it's coming, and I'm sure we will definitely be participating in it. I would say, as of right now, I don't necessarily think we're there. And again, it's the part that's hard for me to reconcile sometimes is, again, our TV media is meant to drive awareness. And so then you're introducing this shoppability, and it it only makes sense if it makes sense. You know what I mean? So sometimes it's just pulling a consumer down way too fast. And we do have a short purchase cycle, so that helps. But I think it's just important to consider that balance too. But we are excited about it. It's a great question. If anyone didn't hear, it was a question of how do you navigate the tug of war between sales and marketing around retail media networks, JVPs, things like that. We have not solved it, I will say. But I think what's important is that we're planning together as a holistic team. And so making sure that before we start planning our year of media, we understand what the needs are from the sales team. And again, I think our partnership with our omnichannel team helps a bit that way because mostly any commitments we've made to the retailers, they will fulfill. Whereas again, my team will kind of add that bonus where it's necessary. And so it's important that we have those holistic conversations heading into a year to say, okay, like what retailers really need that full like offsite support, additional media dollars that my team might have to contribute versus what can be fulfilled with the shopper budgets.
Thanks, Mel. Thanks, everybody, for taking the time.
Thank you.